Hello, students. Welcome back to class. And we're in New Interchange Book 3, which is Upper Intermediate. And we're on Unit 10, which is called The Past and the Future. And if you look at the screen, we're learning about how to talk about things that happened before and how to talk about things that will happen or might happen in the future. And in our last lesson, we talked about important world events in the 20th century. All right, and so we taught this lesson, studied this lesson already, but I want to take a few minutes and help you to understand about a century. And so if you look at your screen, you can see a century is a period of 100 years. Centuries are numbered ordinally. And the ordinal number is when we say first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Those are called ordinal numbers. The common numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But when we say first, second, third, that's called ordinal numbers. And so centuries are numbered ordinally in English and many other languages. For example, the first century, the second century, the third century, the 19th century, the 20th century, the 21st century is how we would say it. The word century comes from the Latin centum, which means 100. And so we use calendars. And so this is the year, I'm recording this in February 2022. And so this is the 21st century, and February 2022 is using a calendar. And so we all use a calendar. You have a calendar in your phone, and every day we look at what day is today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay, so in English, we use what's called the Gregorian calendar. In fact, most of the world right now uses the Gregorian calendar. It's also called the Western calendar or the Christian calendar. Okay, and it was developed several hundred years ago, but most of the world uses this calendar for their dates. But many different cultures have their own calendar. The Hebrew calendar, the Buddhist calendar, the Chinese calendar, the Muslim calendar, the Japanese calendar, and there are more. And so different cultures have their own calendar, but most of the world uses the Gregorian calendar or the Western calendar to communicate with one another. And so according to the Gregorian calendar, this is the 21st century. And so how do we count centuries, 100 years? Well, we go back to zero. What is the 0 century? And so the Gregorian calendar counts year 0 from the year that Jesus Christ was born. And so you can see the chart and you see the red cross. And so that would be considered year 0. And the years, according to the Gregorian calendar, the Western calendar, the years before Jesus was born, we call BCE, before the Christian era. And the years after Jesus was born, we call CE, the Christian era. And so this is the year 2022 CE, the year 2022 in the Christian era. And so, for example, November 9th, 1953 CE, Cambodians gained their independence. Or you can see 3000 BCE was the Sumerian civilization. So 3,000 years before the birth of Jesus was the first civilization. It was called the Sumerian civilization. And 1,953 years after Jesus was born, Cambodia gained their independence from France. And so that's how we say it. And so, but look at this, you might find this interesting. You look at the red cross, and if we go to the right, we go the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, all the way up to the 21st century. The numbers get bigger. But before the birth of Christ, we change and we count backwards. And so the year before the birth of Christ is called 1 BCE. And then 2 BCE, we go backwards. You see that? 1st century, 2nd century to the left. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And so the years before Christ, we count backwards. And the years after Christ, we count forwards. And so that's why we say 3,000 years BCE would be 3,000 years before the birth of Christ. And so century starts with the year 0 and goes to 1, to 100, okay? And so when you get to 100, you've completed the 1st century. And so 100 to 199, and when you come to 200, you begin the 2nd century. And so 200 to 299, and when you get to 300, you begin the 3rd century. So the 3rd century actually is all of the 200 numbers. And the 1st century is all of the 100 numbers. And those of us in the West, this is how we count our birthday too. Our birthday starts at 0. Our birthday starts when we come out of our mother's womb. When the baby comes out of the mother's womb, that's what we count as our birthday. We're born on that day. And then from day 0 until 365 days later on that same day, that is our 1st birthday. And so we're 1 year old. And then we go through all of the next year, 365 more days, and on our next birthday, we're 2 years old, all right? And so this, I thought you might find this interesting, is that we're in the 21st century, and the previous century was the 20th century, all right? And so that's your lesson, no homework, just some information that I thought you might find interesting associated with the snapshot lesson in Unit 10. All right, so let's go on to the next lesson.